I'd like to begin by extending my appreciation to the hosts of this conference for graciously inviting the Texas Nationalist movement to participate. Thank you. Words are funny things. If we each have an idea, but fail to agree on the words used to discuss our ideas, then we can never have real discourse or reach full understanding. The debate over nationalism versus globalism is no different. Over the last 80 years, the definitions of these words have mutated and changed and have become so convoluted that any serious discussion of these as actual concrete ideas or any critical examination of the impacts of the practical implementation of these ideas has been virtually impossible. To begin to examine how nationalism is the specific counterpoint to globalism, it is important that we seek to define both accurately. Globalism in the modern sense is an American invention. Having emerged in the 1940s as a term to describe the post-war direction of the United States, globalism was rooted in the belief that a country with 50% of the world's wealth, but only 6.3% of the world's population, should maintain that disparity at all costs. It was at least initially focused on economics. The idea that had become the cornerstone of American policy became publicly touted as economic integration. The stated goal of economic integration was to remove all barriers to trade between varying states around the globe, with an aim to increase economic productivity, lower the prices of goods and services, and ensure economic prosperity for all. Over the intervening decades, globalism has transformed into a truly global idea that political, economic, and cultural interdependence, with decision-making power placed in the hands of a few, is the key to prosperity. However, on close examination, the publicly stated goal of globalism and its true intent seem to be at odds. How can you have a policy that both maintains economic disparity and eliminates it? The answer is you cannot. The view of globalism is often presented as though economics exists in a vacuum. This clearly contradicts reality. The economic life of people is interwoven with the political and cultural identity of those same people. To wrest control of their economic life, you must, therefore, control their political and cultural lives as well. So let us define globalism for what it really and truly is. Globalism is a system of control that centralizes economic, political, and cultural power in the hands of a few who believe that they know what is best for all the peoples of the world. It seeks to eliminate the existence of the nation-state and the right of the people to self-determination. It seeks to replace the cultural identity and cultural institutions of nations with a manufactured global culture. Let us now look at nationalism. There's no need to examine the history of nationalism, for it is thousands of years old and has existed as long as there have been nations. In its modern sense, nationalism is defined as devotion to the interest or culture of one's nation, and the belief that nations will benefit from acting independently rather than collectively, emphasizing national rather than international goals. It seems straightforward, but it is quite unlike the nationalism that exists in the public consciousness. Large numbers of people around the world have been conditioned to fear nationalism. The old refrain is that nationalism is synonymous with hate and destruction. But nationalism is a raw force that is a form of self and national awareness. It is a positive force of love and pride for who one is, who one's countrymen are, and where one lives. It is an expression of the belief that a people, bound by a common history, common culture, common political thought, and common economic interests, are best equipped to make decisions for themselves. Over the last several decades, we have witnessed a rebirth of nationalism. And these expressions of nationalism exist regardless of race or religion. In fact, we can find it in multi-ethnic areas as well as areas steeped in religious pluralism. It is through this rebirth of nationalism that we see it for what it truly is, the natural counterpoint to globalism. It's no coincidence that in the decades where globalism has emerged as a school of political, cultural, and economic thought, and in the decades that we have been witness to the implementation of the policies to enforce globalism, that we also see the rise of nationalism. As those who promulgate globalism smash trade barriers and work to strip nations of their sovereignty, nations have responded by reasserting their political, cultural, and economic independence. It's been 60 years since globalism in its modern form was first introduced. Yet over those 60 years, the number of recognized countries in the world has grown from 54 to 192 nations. In fact, it's become a maxim that the harder the push for political, cultural, and economic consolidation, the greater the will for national self-determination. The fact that the proponents of globalism fear nationalism show that it is indeed the natural counterpoint. And this fear was publicly illustrated in Oslo, Norway, in December of 2009. Barack Obama, newly elected President of the United States, had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Although he had not been in office long enough to implement any significant policy changes, he received the award nonetheless. His acceptance speech for the Peace Prize oddly focused on war and justifications for it, ending with a clear call for the establishment of a global order. In his assessment of the current threats to global stability and global order, he specifically cited the growth of secessionist movements as an underlying cause of chaos among civilians. In one statement, he revealed to the world, or those that promulgate globalism, fear nationalism and understand that it is the greatest threat to their dreams of global hegemony. However, the resurgence of nationalism in practice has not been preceded by a resurgence in nationalist thought. It has most often been a reactionary byproduct of globalism. While those who promulgate globalism are conscious in their efforts to spread the idea, often those who promote nationalism do so unconsciously, merely as a reaction to the ills of globalism. It's akin to treating the symptoms of a disease, but not the disease itself. Hence we see that globalists recognize and fear nationalism, yet the opposite is not always true. Take, for instance, any of the current independence movements around the world that seek to leave one political union to pursue their national interests, only to join another political union which overrides those same national interests, thereby being a smaller cog in the machine of globalism. While globalism is destined to fail in the long term, nationalism must be consciously embraced and nurtured so that the end of globalism is not followed by an ideology with the same aims. Let's compare these two ideologies further. Globalism says that all political power should be in the hands of the few, and that governments are founded on the authority of those few, and that by the permission of those few, they should be governed. In the end, instituted solely for the benefit of those few. And on the contrary, nationalism says that all political power is inherent in the people of that nation, and that all free governments are founded on the authority of the people of that nation, and instituted exclusively for the benefit of the people of that nation. Globalism cares nothing for you, your country, your identity, your system of government, your history, your heritage, or your hopes and dreams. It views the individual as human capital, a mere means to an end. Nationalism is self-awareness, love of your country. It acknowledges the people and the nations are different, with unique priorities and unique goals and unique visions. It embraces the desires and aspirations of nations and the people therein. Globalism promotes that the only priority of a nation is to act in the best interests of other nations, while nationalism acknowledges that the priority of a nation is to act in the best interest of the people of that nation. Globalism is a relatively new ideology, rooted in a political and economic paradigm that no longer exists. It is a fad. It is a trend. Nationalism is tried, tested, and proven. It acknowledges the eternal truths as well as the current reality. Nationalism is the proven historical precedent. It is the fear of globalists, and it is a direct contradiction to globalism embracing a beautifully diverse world. And as each of these things, it is the only path to attaining and maintaining a multipolar world. It is past time to acknowledge the struggle as it truly is. This is nothing less than a struggle between nationalism and globalism. Globalism must have a counterpoint, and the only one and only true counterpoint to globalism is for the nations of the world to embrace nationalism. Thank you.